Here's a shocking statistic for you. Cervical cancer kills 2 women in the UK every single day. And that is why campaigners want the government to commit to eliminating the disease once and for all, with clear timelines and a detailed plan of action.
Yeah, I'm pleased to say we're joined now by cervical cancer survivor Penny Simmons and Samantha Dixon, who's Chief Executive of Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust. Thanks so much for talking to us tonight. Penny, I wonder if I can come to you first. Tell me a little bit about your story and the importance of getting that smear test.
So I think that I am an example of exactly why one should have a smear test, because I was diagnosed through the NHS cervical screening programme. I didn't have any symptoms whatsoever, so I went for a routine smear. It was a couple of months late, and that smear found borderline abnormalities. From the borderline abnormalities, I had an exam called a colposcopy. And through the exam, they said, look, everything looks absolutely fine, but we want you to come back the following year. And I've got to be honest, I didn't think anything of it. I was fine. I just went about my normal life.
How old are you?
I was 36 at that point.
Okay.
And the following year, I had a reminder from the NHS, it's time to come back for your next smear because of the previous year. And it was at that smear test that essentially they found severe abnormalities and then diagnosed cervical cancer. But I didn't have any symptoms. So quite literally, the smear test saved my life.
Samantha, information is such an important part of this, isn't it? You didn't have the symptoms. What sort of symptoms could some of our viewers be looking out for or thinking about?
So the symptoms of cervical cancer can be bleeding that's irregular for you, unusual vaginal discharge and pain on the lower back and around the tummy. And our vision at Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust is the day when cervical cancer is a thing of the past. And it's not beyond our reach. We have a highly effective HPV vaccination programme, screening programme and colposcopy. And what we're calling for at Joe's is for the UK government to take a leadership role here. We have countries like Canada, Rwanda and Australia who already have their own elimination strategy. We want the same in this country, leadership, a plan and resources, because it's not acceptable that 2 women a day lose their lives to cervical cancer.
Can you tell us a bit more about the HPV vaccine? Why is it so important and are enough people having it?
So the HPV vaccination is for young people around the age of 12 to 13, and it's highly effective in eliminating cervical cancer. So we know that, so HPV is a very common virus, but it's responsible for virtually every case of cervical cancer. But research just a year ago showed those first cohorts of girls who'd been vaccinated with the HPV vaccination showed a 90% decrease in cervical cancer rates. That is phenomenal.
That's quite a drop, isn't it? Penny, to come back to you, how are you now? And, what would your message be to the many women, particularly, who are watching at the moment?
So thank goodness I'm absolutely fine.
Great news.
And for me, it's absolutely in my past. My message is, if you're due a smear, you absolutely should go for screening. It may not be enjoyable, but it's really, really important. And I was lucky, ultimately. No one's lucky to get cancer, but I was lucky. I was 37. I had 3 children. I wasn't intending to have any more children. I look back and it's a thing of the past, but I just can't stress enough how important it is to go for screening, to be vaccinated if you're eligible for vaccination. Because if I hadn't gone for screening, I may never have found it in time, and I may not be here today.
Samantha, do you think the NHS is doing enough to get that message out there?
Well, we would say to anybody who is struggling with going for screening at the moment, because we hear at Joe's lots of reasons why that's a problem for some women. And if there is anyone watching this who might have a child who's coming up for vaccination age and they're a bit unsure about it, I'd say visit the Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust website or the NHS website, where there's lots of unbiased, easy-to-read information.
Because there are people, Penny, I'm sure, watching now who think, not for me, I don't want to go for a smear test. And that's something that's an understandable concern for many women, isn't it?
Absolutely. When after my diagnosis and after my treatment, I wrote a blog about being diagnosed with cervical cancer and my experiences. And some of my friends said to me at the time, I haven't been for a smear test for 10 years. I haven't been for a smear test since I'd had children. And I said to them, and I don't mean this kind of in that kind of blunt way, but I said to them, if that had been me, I may well be dead. because I didn't have any symptoms, and I can't stress that enough. And it isn't easy. They're not pleasant. I didn't used to enjoy going for mine, but it's well worth it from my perspective.
Here you are telling us about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that blunt message is what you need, isn't it? So thank you both so much for coming in and for spreading this really important message.